Hey, this is Dancing Rabbit, and welcome to another Weekend Pagan Perspective. I don't know if this tie-dye cloth is really going to keep me that much warmer or not, but it seems that most of our cold weather stuff, such as it is, we don't use a lot of cold weather stuff here in tropical Houston, is put up somewhere, and I don't feel like dragging everything in storage back out. Okay, so if I don't freeze to death here, we'll get on with the question. This is about Aleister Crowley. I have never delved deeply into Crowley's writings. I don't own any copies of his book. If you want to find out the basics of his life, I'd suggest you do a Google search or go to Wikipedia or somewhere, and you can get a general sort of Cliff Notes overview. What I would like to talk about is my opinions on the man and his work rather than the specifics of either. Aleister Crowley was a 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century, basically independently wealthy British man. And like many of his class and time, he was interested in all sorts of stuff, and he spent time traveling in the Far East and in Egypt. You need to understand that Egyptology was fairly new at that time, and the British were ruling India, so there was a lot of British interest in Hinduism. This was all new and exotic. And so he was exploring a lot of different stuff on sort of a personal spiritual quest. And it seems that he began in Freemasonry, dabbled into Golden Dawn, and then began coming up with some of his own stuff. Spent some time in Egypt, spent some time in India, ended up in Canada and the United States. I think that Crowley was very much a man of his time, that he was a racist, but that wasn't so unusual in his day. You have to understand that slavery had only recently been abolished in the British Empire and later in the United States. Here in the U.S., Jim Crow segregation was perfectly okay and acceptable by probably 90% of the white people in the United States. Women did not have the vote yet. Feminism was really yet to happen. And so the fact that he considered women sort of inferior is not that unusual. I think it would have been very unusual, very progressive, beyond his times, had he been otherwise. He also dabbled in the use of social drugs, opiates, cocaine, and so forth. And this was not too unusual for people of his class and his time who were rebelling against the prevailing Victorian social mores. He experimented a lot with unusual and creative forms of sexuality. And this, again, I think was part of the rebellion against the Victorian era. So he began his search for spirituality in what I would call ceremonial magic. He was an occultist. He was looking into hidden, secret, magical things. Western ceremonial magic was one of his main avenues. His basic law, his statement of what he felt was the basic morality or way that a person should ethically organize their life: do what you will, be the whole of the law. Now, he did have some brief association with Gerald Gardner, and there's a lot of consideration that Gerald may have borrowed some of Crowley's ideas, particularly Crowley's definition of the law, when he was designing Wicca. because Crowley's Law and the Wiccan Rede do have a few words in common. Now, to say your basic ethic is do what you will, that sounds like, just do whatever you want to. Please yourself, enjoy yourself, be as greedy as you want to be, and that's not only okay, but that's actually the most spiritual sort of way that you could live. That's pretty extreme sounding, but what you need to understand is what Crowley meant when he said will. He was talking about an idea that he called your true will, and you might call that maybe your destiny, what it is that you were put here on earth to do. So it wasn't quite as free as just go do whatever you want to, whatever you feel like, but it was figure out what your purpose in life is and then go do it. That is the whole of the law. Crowley's responsible for beginning Thelema as a spiritual, maybe not organization, as a spiritual path, and he was also instrumental in the OTO. So these are not approaches that particularly appeal to me. This is a rather dualistic, Christian-based, maybe not Christian in the sense that most of us would call going to a Christian church, Catholic, Baptist, or whatever, but it's a dualistic view of the world, of good and evil in conflict with each other, that comes out of Renaissance, late medieval Christianity, which is where ceremonial magic comes from. It's a power over rather than a power through type thing, and it reminds me of the alchemist in his cluttered, dusty laboratory, conjuring up spirits and mixing formulas, rather than the pagan who goes out and communes with nature and tries to become in harmony with the forces of nature and seeks the gods in the sense of the much earlier pre-Christian polytheistic deities of nature. So I don't know that this has particularly helped you. I would suggest that maybe you do a whole lot more research into Aleister Crowley and what he taught and what he didn't teach. I would caution you that he was a sensationalist, and some of the things that were pretty shocking that he said them simply for that reason, to be shocking, to be sensational, to get attention. So I wouldn't take absolutely everything in his writings as actually what he really believed and what he really did. As far as warning your friend away from this, I'm not sure, other than just expressing your concern and explaining why you're concerned, that it's really appropriate to attempt to steer your friend away from something or towards something. You could point out why you personally don't find a whole lot of comfort in Aleister Crowley's writings, as somewhat as I have. But I don't think that it's any of our business or responsibility to try to steer people in or out of some spiritual path, because it's not the spiritual path that we're part of or that we feel like is good for us. Like I said, I hope that helps. You really probably should talk to a Thelemite or somebody who is actually into Aleister Crowley and find out what they really believe and what they really do, and then decide, how harmful or perhaps helpful this might be to your friend. So, till next time, this is a rather cold and shivering dancing rabbit wishing all of you lots of warmth, but not too much, and lots of peace. Bye-bye.